Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 74 of the Lost and Found Bin. I am your host, SMQ. Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone out there. Just waiting for Chick to arrive. We were talking earlier. She may have some technical issues, as we often have around here. So, the big thing that I want to start with was the basic information that's been coming in over the last couple days or so, talking about. Are you there? Hello, are you there?
Hello.
Yes, we are live. How are you?
I'm good. How's everybody?
I'm fantastic. I trust everyone out there
Hello?
can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
All right, awesome. I trust everyone in the chat can hear you. If you want to reach out to them, I'm assuming.
I'm trying to, but for the past couple of episodes, I just can't get the new video doesn't show up for me. I don't get the notification, and it doesn't show up on your page. So I have to refresh 15 times before I can actually get on the video to see what's going on.
Well, what happens is it's changed. I don't know of a way other than going live and putting on music like other creators do, and then turning the mic off, and then you and I get settled. That's the only way that I know how to do this now. So what we all have to do is just go live at one time, which, I mean, that can be something that we can do, is I can play sort of background music so everybody can get kind of settled. So that may be something that you and I can talk about offline to sort of get everybody settled, because it's now been disentangled from the Hangouts. We have Hangouts, which is Google. Then we have YouTube itself, which is the host, and then we have OBS, and it's all separate now. So it's hard to get everything coordinated. So what I've noticed a lot of other creators do is they'll go ahead and get everything streaming and up and running, and then they'll run this background music as everything kind of pulls together, because really you're dealing with three separate pieces of software that you're trying to get to work all together. So pretty complicated, actually, for if you're doing this off the cuff like we are.
Very true. Now it's shown up. Okay, so I was refreshing the whole time while we were talking, and now on SMQAI's page, it shows the new stream. So it doesn't even show it on your page. So if someone came to your page to try and see the show, they can't see it for quite a while. And that might be stopping people from actually getting to join in. But that's just YouTube for you, huh?
Yeah, it's a shame, because I don't know what else, and that may be something that's why they do that. Then that may explain it, and you've just explained it for me. I noticed a lot of people who do live streams now, they'll have an intro of 5 minutes of music, and I'm like, what is this? Why are they doing this? And it'll be probably copyright free slow jazz, and it's like this, just background elevator music, and I guess that's what it is. They're waiting for everything to come online now. So I don't know. So all right, obviously we'll get to the alien stuff. A lot of alien stuff going on. I've got YouTube videos talking about all the usual quantum stuff, falling through. Dr. Kaku talking about falling through multiple versions of reality. We've got all that lined up. But you had actually a kind of an alleyway you wanted to go down, and I thought that was kind of interesting, that we don't usually talk about this kind of subject matter here, but why not? It's interesting, and I think people would be into it. So what is it? What's going on?
One of the suggestions that I'd put forward about the show, and I wasn't sure whether or not to go with it, because I know that a lot of things are very sensitive in today's discourse, and I don't want to upset anybody, but it's just that I've noticed, and you've noticed too, SMQ, there's been times where we've made a joke about the water parks on the moon and things like that, and then it came true, and then there was water on the moon, and there was a museum on the moon, and there are Andy Warhol crazy drawings on the moon, and a moon museum, and all kinds of weird things. And it just got me to thinking about this thing that keeps coming back and back again, really since the 2016 election. And it all started as a joke, right? The meme magic thing, the frog thing.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, it's kind of in some unwritten but generally understood way, it's connected up with the character of the Joker from the Batman universe. And they keep making these Joker movies. And every time they do, it seems to spiral into a bunch of new, like, meme magic that actually ends up having an effect on reality. And I know that that sounds completely and utterly insane, but I've been watching this for years. And I think it's people, some of them might realize what's going on and be like, this is some kind of crazy chaos thing, or it's like a Mandela Orion thing. Like, we're not even sure how it works. It's just something that I've observed. But maybe there are people that do understand what they're doing, and maybe they are the ones that get the ball rolling. But either way, it seems when that there's a whole bunch of people all focused on this crazy meme magic, it like writes itself, and then it ends up actually having an effect, even as far as the mainstream media. You have huge journalists like arguing against these Joker movies, and you have anons, in their basement on 4chan typing away and somehow affecting far-flung, like, news corporations and how people see things. And it's so crazy. I don't think it would make any sense anywhere except here.
Oh yeah, and I can tell you just from my research about what you're talking about meme magic, mimetic magic, that's absolutely a subset of chaos magic. And what you do, like with anything with magic, it's intention based. And then what you do, sometimes if you do like sigil magic, you'll write out your intention in the affirmative, and then you do a bunch of different steps, and then you draw it into a symbol. Then you put that symbol out there and you charge the symbol, then you put it out into the ether, and then it comes back and it does things for you. Now a lot of people do with like mimetic magic is they will actually take a symbol like the Joker or something like that, and they will actually add that charge to that, and that charge will actually grow into a kind of energy force in the ether, in the astral plane, whatever, however you want to put it, and it will actually affect change in a very real way. And that's why they're busy. I don't know if they've shut it down permanently or what, but they want, they shut down 4chan, 8chan, all the boards. They want to shut down. It's because they know that what they're doing is they work on this idea of chaos magic, and they're combining it with that mimetic magic. And then if you get into the idea of like what Thomas Sheridan and other magicians talk about, they talk about ideas of like I forget the author, the one author he's particularly impressed with, the American writer who did Cthulhu. So he talked about what people do is they charge these energy forms. Then the energy forms themselves are sprung to life themselves, and they become life forms within themselves, and they're hard to stop. And it was like, we've seen it happen in the 2016 elections. We saw it happen recently. We have these clown waves that happen, and all of that is kind of mimetic. H.P. Lovecraft. Thank you, folks. So they talk about Lovecraft is also invoked by Geordie Rose from D-Wave. A lot of people, whenever they invoke Lovecraft and Cthulhu and that kind of mimetic magic and things like that, what you're doing is you're borrowing from that energy source, and then you're redirecting it, the energy, to do whatever it is you want to do. That was the whole thing with the Pepe Keck thing. I think it was the Higher Side Chats, which I was on. They have an episode out there that they have an episode out there, and you can go to it, and they have one guy out there. They really laid out really good about mimetic magic and stuff, and it's very cool.
Yeah, I think I saw that, and they actually went back into like the frog deity from ancient Egypt that was
Mm-hmm.
called Heket, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And that the frog thing almost looks the same as this frog that seemed to come out of nowhere that like just became like just as J.H. Armstrong said in the chat, like a mind virus, like it just spread everywhere.
Hmm.
And I guess what's bringing this up again to me is that they released another Joker movie. It came out on the 4th, and people are just going crazy. There's articles everywhere. There's people on both sides of the aisle just going insane and thinking that something insane is going to happen just because this movie came out. And I for one, I'm like, okay, so that energy that you're getting a whole bunch of people watching this movie and directing their focus on this again, but I don't think it happens the way that people think it happens. It
No.
seems to always be like a bad joke that you don't think is going to happen and then happens, like completely by accident. You're not trying to do anything. You just make a bad joke and suddenly there it is, and that in itself is like the pun, because the Mandela effect has like a sense of humor on its own, and
Hmm.
it's somehow connected to this mean magic thing that has turned everything on its head. Like the most powerful organizations, the most powerful political machines, the most powerful of everyone were not able to defeat the Anons,
Right.
that were on these boards. And that was the moment when a lot of us, I think, said, oh my gosh, this reality is literally upside down. Like this is a weird inverted reality where I mean, some guy on Twitter posted yesterday, and I'm not even following him. Like someone retweeted, just some random guy, and it just floored me what he said. He just tweeted, I'm 87% sure that the Anons on 4chan could dismantle the most complex government organizations if they wanted to." And I just stopped right there, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, the fact that there's even any grounds or credence to this, like, brings the whole 2016 thing back into focus again."
And again, we're going back on that 4 year cycle again, and we're doing it in Orion. And I think we were in Orion, and that's what people weren't expecting. And you can see it. And I'm not gonna get specific about politics, because what a lot of people don't understand about politics and what frustrates them about politics, I'm gonna give everybody some inside baseball. And some of you may know it, and a lot of you don't know it, and they know that you don't know it. And here's what it is. Politics is a major lagging indicator of culture. Culture comes years and years and years before politics. Politics is a lagging indicator of what's happening. So whatever is happening on mainstream media when you turn the television on, or is happening on any kind of mainstream outlet, or anything that a politician is actually saying, that's probably about a year to 2 years behind what is actually going on in terms of the people that actually create reality and sculpt reality, and determine what you will or will not pay attention to. And what happened was there was some kind of breakdown from Sagittarius to Orion when we made that shift, that somehow the way in which people were able to be focused and to be treated as cattle. A lot of the cattle broke away, and they're no longer cattle. And I don't know what happened and how it happened, but it's all tied into the Mandela effect, and it's all tied to the post 2012 shift. And whatever happened post 2012, it's been increasingly building. Now, a lot of people have talked about raising vibrations and a lot of new age stuff, and we've talked about the fifth to the sixth stage jump in the one human problem. But what it's really all about is the actually of Baked and Awake, the guy from Baked and Awake. He actually sent over a really interesting video that I retweeted, and it was talking about what happened was when the shift happened. I'm adding the shift part happened, that the base vibrational frequency had a deficiency in it. So when we came over into this narrow band of reality, you can call it the electromagnetic spectrum, you can call it whatever you want, that in itself had major gaps and deficiencies. And when you have anons and all these other people, they're able to actually jump in, and they're able to fill those voids and kind of sculpt and bend realities in reality in a way that they couldn't do it before as a mass group. And that's part of what's happening here. So I don't know.
It is really really crazy, and it's just like, it took me a minute to think about the connection, but it's
Hmm.
just like the things that that happened with us, I
Mm-hmm.
started to consider, well, maybe people didn't even necessarily know that they were actually going to have an effect that would spiral outwards, because we didn't know when we were joking about the moon, and we were joking in private. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we weren't even like making jokes, out in front of everybody and having everyone focus on it. But it was just like the whole Mandela effect that, especially at that point in time, just seemed so ridiculous with the things it was changing, that we were joking away. And then it went and made those things into mainstream articles, and we were very taken aback.
Mm-hmm.
But I suppose the difference is like the people that are using this for other means, they're not taken aback. They keep pushing up the same thing, and they gain an awful lot of momentum, like a huge amount of momentum.
Well, that and we did the World War II thing that we dropped, and now a lot of people that has now been incorporated. I think it was the guy who's the anthropologist guy, Richard. Recently did something on World War II. Richard Seffer or something like that. I don't know the guy's specific name, but he was talking about the Battle of Los Angeles and now incorporated into. The broadcast, I think it was like a CBS live broadcast in the Battle of Los Angeles, where they were firing off of what they thought was Japanese forces. It ended up they were firing. Well, he was speculating that it was a UFO, and then further they talked about in the CBS. Broadcast, they were talking about how the Japanese were shelling Santa Barbara, and so now that's part of regular history. And now this time last year, actually, well, this time around January, when we were talking about it, it wasn't. No one had ever talked about how the Japanese had shelled Oregon, California, Washington, taken over parts of Alaska. All of that now is Robert Seffer. So I was listening to this guy. I don't know a lot about the guy, but I listened to one of his videos, and I was listening to World War II. And in the background, I could hear CBS talk, and I think it was CBS or NBC. They were talking about how the Japanese had been shelling Santa Barbara all day long. And we were one of the first people to talk about finding this Mandela effect way back in January. We were the ones going, there may have been others before us, and that's fine, but I'm just saying we did a whole series on the World War II thing, and it started building up more and more and more. And it goes back to the frequency here. If there's a gap, there's sort of a flow to things, and you can't go against the flow. However, if you find sort of gaps here and there, you can kind of fill it in and make things happen for yourself. And I think that's what all this is about. Now, as far as the Joker thing, like you bring up, I don't think that there's going to be anything that happens. And the reason why is it's always whenever you're caught off guard. It was just like the Las Vegas thing, or it was the New York thing in 2001. It's always when you're caught off guard. It's almost as if they did this on purpose. They built it up to be dangerous in order to inoculate the public once again from something like this actually happening in a movie theater. So it's very interesting. It's almost like they're catching on to the game like way late to it.
True. And I kind of feel the same way. I feel like because people are expecting something crazy to pop off, nothing will.
Right.
But something totally left field that you're not expecting might pop off from it. Like, and who knows what that would be, but it's always something that you're caught off guard and you're not expecting. It's almost like if you're expecting something, it doesn't happen or
Yeah.
it doesn't come true. You know what I mean? It has to be
Mm-hmm.
something crazy that has a punchline to it that you weren't expecting.
Mm-hmm. And that goes back to, I think, some of the success of either chaos magic or the mimetic folks, and like again, I can't just go to the higher side chats and type in like mimetic magic. And this was in the heat of the 2016 election. This guy, I forget who it was, but he did a real brilliant breakdown of the ancient Egyptian gods of chaos, along with the ciphers that they found. And looks like someone that was hunchbacked over a computer screen, along with some sort of record or something like that. And all of these forces were coming together. And it's like you said, it was almost like lightning was being caught in a bottle in order to redirect reality itself. And again, when we were in Sagittarius, I don't think something like that was even possible, even given the technology that we have now. I don't think that was possible ever. And now it is. is. And I think it dissolves further and further and further. And it gets to the point to where I'm starting to actually see all kinds of different mainstream people saying that more or less the phrase dissolving consensus is actually coming true, and that nothing is working, nothing works right, we pay more and more for less and less, the trains aren't running, nothing out there is working right. Now that's one way you could look at it. I just think of it as it's some kind of transition that we haven't gotten our arms around, which is kind of the point of the channel.
Yeah, I definitely agree that I don't think it was something that could ever happen in Sagittarius. I
No.
think the biggest it could have been was maybe a joke or something that would have gotten mentioned once on the news, but it's not something that could have spiraled out of control and dismantled some of the most powerful, organizations and political machines and money. The amount of money that these political organizations have too, none of that counted. Like all of that
Mm-hmm.
got blown away
Mm-hmm.
somehow. And in the Sagittarius arm, I can't see that happening. It was kind of, the guy with the most money generally was able to win or was able to, have massive effects on what the audience heard or have a massive effect, on all of these things. And here in Orion, it doesn't seem to be that way. I think because it's so chaotic, in some strange way, it almost evens the playing field between the regular guy and perhaps the very rich connected person.
Well, yeah,
Because, yeah,
absolutely. The idea of mutually assured destruction, particularly in this political sphere, has been absolutely upended. And that's why people are absolutely apoplectic on both sides, is because that's been completely upended. So, without I'm skirting dangerously close to a topic that one is covered ad nauseum, two, no one, everyone is set in their ways with something like this. Um, and three, it's just not worth going down that rabbit hole for me. So aliens, UFOs, I've got up on the screen here just one of the many things that are out there right now. We may be closing in on the discovery of alien life. Are we prepared? That is NBC News, about as MSM as it gets. And it just seems to be ramping up into something. I don't know. I'm going to show the video soon of off of Ocracoke Island, off of the island. It's a North Carolina island that's just south of Oceana, which is the major base where they shot the Tic Tac and the Go, or whatever they call it, footage of the aliens there, because they run fighter, they have sorties and fighter jets off of the East Coast there in the Mid-Atlantic. So what do you think, Chick?
that was some very, very strange activity there. I mean, it was so like kind of lit up that I couldn't really see like the spacecraft, so to speak.
Mm.
But it certainly looked very strange, almost like the way birds all fly together in kind of coordination. Except obviously, if you're moving super fast in a ship, you don't want to be that close together.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. In fact, I'll go ahead and let me pull that up for everybody. All right, first, before I pull it up, I can actually bring up. I'll bring up the actual article. This is the actual article here, and it was from the Charlotte Observer, right? So if anybody missed it, it's the link is down there, and it's actually from the Charlotte Observer. And the article is talking about a fleet of lights recorded off of North Carolina's Outer Banks has ignited a debate about whether they are an honest-to-goodness UFOs or just part of a mysterious military exercise. It is not letting me interact. That's okay, because they actually have a link to the actual YouTube channel that it was on, and I can interact with that and show you exactly what's happening. And I'm going to play that real quick.
Look, nothing in the sky at all. Then all of a sudden, bam! What is that?
Okay, so there they are. Those there they are. And it's very interesting because they stay in formation as the video continues to play on. And I was reading the comments actually about this particular formation, and One thing I can say about being particularly a Navy brat, a lot of people were saying that that they it was flares, or it was, and they were naming off all of these really common kind of military things. I can tell you it's not. And someone that still lives near the ocean, it's not. So I don't know.
Yeah,
Anyway.
that doesn't look like anything that I've seen.
Mhm.
And I've lived not on military bases, but close to them.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
I've seen plenty of that kind of thing.
mhm.
And in all honesty, this reminds me more of like footage I've seen of like lights hovering over Vegas and over the Nevada desert and strange things like that, that just people ended up not even getting any explanations from it. But it kind of reminds me more of that because of the kind of angular like V formations and like diamond like formations it seems to have. That seems to be very much in line with unexplained like UAP sightings from even years ago.
Yeah, the only thing that this was actually missing, and I'll go ahead and play it
Anybody tell
again.
me what that is?
See how it's in formation. And they're changing, and I don't think it may have been from the focus.
Nothing around. Look. Nothing.
And actually, where they're actually on a ferry to Ocracoke Island, and I've taken that ferry before. If you drive down the Outer Banks, which are very thin barrier islands, you can get to the very end there. Ocracoke Island is pretty much the end of the line there. So that's probably where they're at. So they're well out into the Atlantic. So it's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy.
Very crazy. It's reminding me of how people have been saying that the stars here are not like the stars in the Sagittarius arm.
Mhm.
And when you focus in on them very close with like even a cell phone camera or like a normal camera, they're just like blinking lights of different colors.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Some people have been saying that they feel like it's UAP phenomenon, that it's not actually natural starlight, that the sky is like very very strange here, and it might be stranger than we ever even imagined.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. I believe that too. And this goes back into, again, we're in a time and a space and an area where these kinds of things are not only the norm, they're actually starting to pop on at least weekly now, if not almost daily. I mean, all the time. And it's pretty odd. It's pretty crazy. And then if we're not going to be able to play very much because YouTube will shut us down really fast. But what I tried to do was get to the part of a very interesting part of the interview here of Dr. Kaku talks about this falling through different versions of reality. So I'm going to play this, like just a second of this clip here.
And have a spinning black hole, they don't collapse to a dot. They collapse to a ring of neutrons, such that centrifugal force prevents it from collapsing.
I can't hear him, SMQ.
If you were to fall through the North Pole of the ring, you wind up mathematically on a parallel universe.
I think hopefully the group could have heard that. He said basically the black hole turns into a ring. And could everybody else hear that that was out there? Hopefully you heard that. He said basically black holes can collapse into a ring, and that ring can end up where you could fall through the center of it, and you could end up in different versions of reality. Hopefully everyone can hear that. Yeah, you guys heard that? Okay, excellent. So, he's about as mainstream as it gets. So, I don't know.
Do you want to play that little clip again without me interrupting? I'm sorry, guys. I like spoke over it while they were trying to hear it.
Is that what they said? I can't, okay, yeah, I can try to find it again. I've got to, I think, rewind it. It's hard to get it exactly right, but I think I'm on I think it's like, 150
an hour. And if you look at Einstein's equations and have a spinning black hole, they don't collapse to a dot. They collapse to a ring of neutrons, such that centrifugal force prevents it from collapsing. It's stable. If you were to fall through the North Pole of the ring, you wind up mathematically on a parallel universe.
So I had to stop it there, but he says basically if you fall through the ring, you end up on a parallel universe. And then he also goes on to say all kinds of other interesting things about parallel universes and the multiverse theory. So, and the point being is that these kinds of things this time last year, you guys just don't understand unless you've been with the channel the whole time and you've been with the Mandela effect the whole time. It is getting weirder and weirder and weirder every week. These kinds of things, people at his level just would not have said these kinds of things. And NBC wouldn't have published these kinds of things. The Charlotte Observer, which I'm sure is like the New York Times of Charlotte, North Carolina, they just wouldn't have. It's just getting weirder out there.
When you said NBC, I thought you said NPC. I was like, oh,
yes,
oh snap.
That's right. So it's just getting stranger and stranger, and it adds to it. And we've been here and we've been able to witness it the whole time, and we've been able to witness the ramping up of this. So and where does this lead? I don't know where this leads to. I think it's interesting. I think it's worth talking about. I would be speculating if I thought where this led to. Certainly, a lot of people have a lot of different opinions, but I'm going to keep some of my opinions to myself. So I don't know, Chick. A lot of weirdness.
I feel like what can you do but speculate in that kind of I mean, I think even those of us that are not experts are quite clear on the fact that yes, something crazy happened. We ended up somewhere where we weren't before, and we never expected to be moving realities or moving dimensions, but it happened to us. Like pretty much everybody that's listening, I'm pretty sure they're Mandela affected. Some people might just be interested in UAP, and that's fine too. But I'm just saying that most people that are longtime listeners, like they know something happened to them, and whether it's a black hole or whether it's some kind of crazed quantum immortality or whether it was just, I don't know, just like some strange junction point in history where for some reason we decided to veer off away from whatever direction the Sagittarius arm was going. But it wasn't a choice that I think was consciously made for any of us, because we weren't even made aware that there were other options available. If you didn't like the reality you were in, that you could just decide to go to another one.
Yeah. And I think one of the more curious things about this is, and I've toyed with the idea, but I'm so afraid of what it would do, is if we were to work as a group to try to, and we've done it before. We did it with the Philadelphia experiment, and that was just before we also started concentrating on the World War II thing. If we were to try as a group to focus our energy on something and see if something comes from it, the problem is that I would say now at this point, being a year later, I was worried about doing, something like that a year ago. I certainly would be probably more cautious about doing something like that. If anyone's curious and they're new to the channel, I did something like that on the Philadelphia experiment, to do a group concentration and meditation on not only the Philadelphia naval shipyards. We also did it for it was like 1947 or 51 or something like that. You'd have to go back and into the channel and find it, and to try to kind of concentrate on it and do nothing but concentrate on that period of time. And because we were looking at time as almost like a geographical location, like we were trying to look at time, moving in time, like we talked about, moving from Miami to Los Angeles, and we were trying to look at it that way. And certainly time behaves, at least in the Orion arm, it certainly seems to behave that way. So what we were trying to do was try to affect some sort of change in that way. Now, interestingly enough, about a month or so later, we started to get into the World War II thing, and we started to do expeditions into that. And just like Anatoly Fomenko, we found that the deeper you look into history, the more chaotic it actually becomes. And it got to the point to where Chick and I and another researcher, we would find that every time we looked deep into a situation, it would change dramatically, to the point to where the war seemed as if it wasn't going very well to the Allies, and major sort of schematic and operational changes to the Allied forces got to the point to where they were losing, and we finally pulled out and stopped watching it. However, the echoes of our research seem to be still out there. Now, I'm not saying that we're the ones that actually caused that. However, I will say that it certainly seems to be, at least in my life and Chick's life, that we now notice, like I said, I was watching that channel that CBS News now covers. Back then, the Battle of Los Angeles had casualties. Not only that, it talked about how the Japanese were shelling Santa Barbara for like a 12 to 24 hour period. That never existed before in my timeline, Chick. And, who knows what's out there now?
Oh yeah, it's
who knows?
I was just like, I don't even have the words for the amount of who knows what's going on. And we've, like, our bar has changed over the course of just like this show of what is crazy and what is insane. And like, I feel at the beginning episodes, there was still so much, I guess, narrative of reality that made sense, that we still found some things to be, so obscure or so obtuse, so crazy. And the longer we go on, the less narrative there is left. I mean, it's almost like you had drawn there the vision of like the flow of how things are going, and if there's something missing within that bandwidth, then it can kind of be rewritten or changed. To me, and it might just be me, it feels like more and more is missing from that narrative. It feels to me like everything is trying to hold its shape. Reality is trying to hold its shape, but it's kind of like warping and pulling back together. And every time it does, there's a little bit more code missing, like from the simulation. And just as we go along, we just accept it as normality that, hey, less and less and less of this is making sense. But, somehow life still goes on, and somehow things still kind of stay within a structure. But I am noticing that reality is becoming stranger. And I bet, I don't know how long the strangeness will go on for, but I bet this isn't the peak of it.
No, yeah, I totally, I agree. And apparently, someone said they watched, J.H. Armstrong watched Dark Journalist, and apparently Lindbergh said that USA lost World War II in 1970. See, that's interesting because, one of the more infamous, hey, what's up, Carol? One of the more infamous, Mandela effects was the Lindbergh baby, and that one changed, that one flip-flopped for about 6 months, about 3 or 4 times. It got to the point to where no one really knew the history of the Lindbergh baby, whether the baby was found, whether it wasn't found, whether people were convicted, whether they weren't. We had about 4 or 5 groups of people who had different ideas, and all of it had a fair amount of residue that was saying whether or not this stuff, the residue was, strong enough to where everyone who said no, it went this way, they actually had something to show for it to prove their residue. And just like, with the Ed McMahon, we have Ed McMahon and Johnny Carson being handed a check to Publishers Clearinghouse and all that, and yet we still have Ed McMahon with American Family Publishing, which popped up about a year and a half ago. I'd say it was just at the beginning of this YouTube channel, and right when Chick and I started the Lost and Found bin. So, and obviously all of this is tied to aliens and UAPs and UFOs and string theory and quantum physics and everything that goes with that, because it's all, when you boil it all down to, it's last I knew the baby, same here, the last I knew the baby was dead, and the last I remember was the baby was dead and people were convicted. However, when I grew up, it was a mystery, the Lindbergh baby, that it was never they never found. They never found the baby. To me, it was always a huge mystery. What do you remember, Chick?
Yeah, and I don't remember them convicting anybody either because they didn't know if the baby was dead or not.
Mm-hmm.
And like one of the residues that people have brought up for that is the Simpsons. Grandpa Simpson says, "I'm the Lindbergh baby."
Right. Yeah.
And like, people have said, why would he say that if they found the Lindbergh baby? I think it was like the day afterwards and immediately convicted the guy. That wouldn't make any sense. And also, why would it be an infamous case? I know the Lindberghs are important, but I just mean like there's been a lot of murder cases,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the ones that don't get solved that are usually the more infamous because it's a mystery and people want to solve it. If something is solved immediately, um, I mean, unless the circumstances are extreme, it's usually not that big of a, not that it's not that big of a deal, but I'm just saying it was so long ago. The fact that we all know about the Lindbergh baby, it doesn't make sense why we would if it was an open and shut case.
Yeah, and more people who don't have the vocabulary for the Mandela effect and don't have the background for this kind of thinking. They're the Anne Frank thing that was a real shock to a lot of people, and they're still trying to wade through that and trying to understand that, and the point being is that 20, 30 years ago, and I don't think it's going to take that long because things are ramping up so fast, people used to get laughed at, and you had the requisite, either the Twilight Zone whenever they would talk about UFOs. How about this for mainstream media, how lazy and really, and if you're in the mainstream media and you're listening right now, please stop being so lazy. Particularly if you're a producer and you have some power. Stop playing the little whistle part of the X-Files when you talk about UFOs, and stop with the Twilight Zone, because it's really you're either doing that on purpose or you're lazy. Either way, it's really bad what you're doing. But the point being is that the UFO thing, by these mainstream, these mainstream outlets, just gosh, even 6 months ago, was just there's no way that I would imagine, with seeing the peacock there, if you see it in the upper left-hand corner, we may be closing on the discovery of alien life. Are we prepared? And that is an NBC article. I just, it's ramping up so fast. So my point that I'm linking to this is that for the Mandela effect, for those that say that we're all mass misremembering, all the same thing, or at least large populations remembering things like Ed McMahon working for Publishers Clearinghouse, or the Diary of Anne Frank. For all of us who are misremembering those facts, those massive, major cultural facts, don't hesitate when you go to make fun of someone, because the people who made fun of alien folks, or people who are into the UFO thing, are now having to stare down articles like this. And they're having to do that because Congress is now moving to allocate funds to researching UAP and UFOs. You have, Tom DeLonge and TTSA, and you have NBC, and all these people are moving now. And really, you're those who made jokes about this kind of thing. My favorite thing, just to sidetrack real quick, is when they talked about the Phoenix Lights, and that mayor came out and he made fun of folks. And, they said, we have found the Phoenix Lights, and do you remember that? And they brought out the guy in the alien suit, and everyone was laughing. Do you know he's come out in some other documentary or something and said he was like pressured politically to make fun of that, and that now he's like an advocate for he's an advocate for the UAP. He's actually an advocate for alien life. So it's crazy.
I didn't know that he was pressured. I do find that very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, we had talked before when we were talking about UAP phenomena on the show, that on Sagittarius they wanted to cover up anything to do with UAP or UFO. It was always, oh no, that's silly. And in Orion, they're mainstream like pushing, like, no, it's real. It's here. Are you prepared? Look at it. Here it is. And it's the general population are like, no, it's not happening. So that's turned on its head as well.
That's what I forgot. I got sidetracked by the Phoenix Light. The point I'm making is that the reason why it's mainstream here is I think we've gone to something even more extreme, which is the Mandela effect. And I think the Mandela effect is way more out there and more terrifying than the UFO, alien, UAP, UFO, whatever you want to call it. I think the Mandela effect for the Orion arm is what UAP UFOs were for Sagittarius, and it's just not as a big a deal. And my point about it is that it's ramping up so fast here, and we have such a ramping up of dissolving consensus that, yeah, exactly. The governor admitted that he saw it himself and that he believed it. That we have dissolving consensus is that it's going to be perhaps in a year or two from now, we're going to have articles like this, like the Washington Post article that says UFOs are real and you're going to have to get used to it. They're going to come out and say, okay, we did something with string theory. We did something, with qubits or whatever when we were reaching out in our quantum processor, and we did something to reality, and the Mandela effect is real. Or the multiverse and all these other things, because of communication, it's all real. And I would be not surprised. I would be more relieved if articles started to emerge like that about the Mandela effect, but particularly in the next 2 years. Now, this is obviously not a prediction. I'm saying I would be relieved if that were to be the case. But people were laughing at UFOs, if you remember Sagittarius, and certainly Chick and I do, and you were made fun of if you talked about it. And here they want you to indulge and believe in it.
Yeah, but they don't want you to talk about reality changes, which is very, very strange. As in, like, I'm sure there are some mainstream articles that admit to or allude to, the facts have changed or the situation is understood differently than it was, very thinly veiled language for, hey, this has changed and now it's different. But I don't see anyone apart from the Mandela effect community really taking on how serious this is. Like, I was talking the other day to someone, to one of my loved ones, and I was saying, oh man, there's so much weird stuff going on. There's like trumpet sounds in the sky. There's mainstream articles about UFOs. There's all kinds of crazy stuff going on. And they said that they didn't see any of it and they didn't think anything was going on.
Wow.
And I was like, that's a good litmus test of the general population. They're just like, no, nothing's happening.
Wow. Even after all this, I mean, we show article every week, on big sites with allegedly huge, man, I wonder, I know this is crazy, right? Trumpet sounds exactly. I wonder, could you imagine if there's only like 1,000 of us?
It could be. It could literally be at this point. I mean, that's just how crazy it is now.
Right? Just there's like 1,000 of us. And the numbers are just inflated because it's like some kind of I don't know what someone wrote, that it's like a psyop because we're inside of a simulation or something. So the psyop is real, but the thing is that we're actually inside.
inside the simulation.
Right.
And my gosh.
Oh my god. But I don't know. It's just too much, man.
No, go ahead.
I have a purple balloon following me.
Oh yes, your purple balloon. I forgot about that.
Yeah, he popped up again later today. If everyone who follows me on Twitter will know that there's a purple balloon who is popping around my house. It's better than birds hitting my house, so I'll take it. It's weird. It reminds me of like It or something like that. But so far, no clowns have come after me. They've all stayed on the screen with Joker, so there you go.
That's good. Has it replaced Stalker Cat, or is Stalker Cat and Stalker Balloon joining forces?
Stalker Cat has not messed with Stalker Balloon because I don't think Stalker Cat has seen it. However, they both are now around the house. So, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of weird.
I'm not sure what's going on there, man. There always seems to be something strange after you, which
weird.
is a little weird. I was just going to say one thing that we forgot to mention that's going on with all of the reality craziness and the devolving consensus and everything else is the Schrodinger effect.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you always call it Schrodinger's cat, but in this case, it's not about cats, even though I love cats and cats are important. The Schrodinger's people effect, where even at this point, reality has become so dissolved and so chaotic in the Orion arm in particular that there's no particular consensus on whether someone has died or not. And that goes back to the OG of the named of this effect, the Mandela effect.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I still armored over it. And I know it's been years and years down the road. I know what I'm saying is like, I've been seeing this consistently since 2016, because in 1996 and 2008, when I saw other Mandela effects, I didn't ever come across the Schrodinger aspect of people dying and then not being dead, or trying to figure out whether I'm switching realities and that person just never died in this new reality, or if people just, or if it's like a simulation that's just glitching out and people don't even remember that that person died, and then they get a new report that the exact same person died. It's very, very strange. It's really strange. And at first I was skeptical and I was like, oh, maybe it's just about celebrities. But then people in the Mandela effect were saying that it was, in the Mandela effect community, were saying that this is just part of life now, that it's something that's happened to people that are not celebrities that they know in their personal lives. So I feel like for anyone that's like, doing deep soul searching, that's probably one of the deepest parts of the effect. And I would hope that over the next couple of years that we would get some kind of answers about that. I mean, are we just switching realities, or have things become incredibly more complicated now for a natural life cycle as it was previously understood?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think it's a natural part of our life now, and this is the way it is. And I don't know, perhaps in a lot of ways that. Oh, and by the way, thank you, Darren. He says here, great job keeping those mainstream media shows attached. They have their own agenda, and it is to keep the general population asleep. And if you ask a question, you're a conspiracy theorist. I totally agree, Darren. Thank you so much for the super chats, and we have our Patreon page, $2, $5, and $10. We put out different videos over there, and all of that is going to go to the webpage, so that we're going to build. It'll be awesome. But I think this is all part of it now. However, I'm wondering if now, because of the technology, because it is so open, perhaps towards the end of everyone's lives, and they kept it to themselves, they would see these strange changes. And because of the internet now and the openness that people have from the anonymity that it affords you on the internet, they're able to talk about it a bit more. And this goes back to my old theory. It's kind of an augmented version of my old theory of what the Mandela effect was. They're more willing to talk about it. Just like people now are more willing to talk about the UFO and the UAP thing, because there are different, also science gives people a lot of cover, because the cover that they're giving them is in the quantum world. The cover that they're giving them is whenever you hear videos like we played earlier about black holes and falling through dimensions and things like that. So, again, Thomas Sheridan was saying that they have no idea what they're dealing with. They're dealing in magic and in chaos, and they're dealing in those kinds of things, and all they're doing is putting a scientific sheen on it. So to me, when I saw that was kind of a pat on my own back, because I had been saying that for a very, very, very long time. So I don't know.
I don't think that any of us really know yet. We're waiting to see. Hopefully, like, the upside of all of this chaos is the gaining of understanding through the whole experience.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely, I agree. Ay. So, what do you got going on this week?
What do I have going on this week? This week I have not been feeling the best, but a lot of people around me have had the cold, and so I've just been dealing with that. I've been watching some of the strange human resonance. We haven't been getting human resonance blasts, but we've been getting very, very strange wave patterns. So I was waiting to see if anything strange came out of all that. And yeah, just kind of really just on the wait and see is where I am right now. I'm kind of expecting something crazy to happen, but kind of not, because it's like I said before, just a strange storm of the human resonance patterns, the meme stuff with the Joker movie coming out. There's, just a lot of different things that kind of point to me like something could happen, but at the same time, I'm, don't necessarily want anything too wild to happen. I would prefer if there was a change that you know was more information based, such as like when we got the gateway process papers released. Like
Hmm.
I would like a change like that where they release another big pile of papers that have incredible answers in them.
Yeah, yeah. And we've got some papers too. We have, and eventually we probably will release those to the broader YouTube audience. But I think with the Joker thing, to put on my film critic hat for just one moment, I've been pretty critical of Hollywood because it doesn't make any new movies anymore. Not really. Everything that they do now seems to be a remake, and that really, and they've doubled down because the Marvel properties are so expensive. They do just the Marvel and the DC properties, and they just do it over and over and over and over again, and that's a financial. Decision that they made. But I remember Steven Spielberg said one day, "What's going to happen is these studios, they put all of their money into every movie. They put all of they live on movie to movie." And he said eventually all of these studios, these massive studios, and this is what he said, and I'm paraphrasing, but roughly what he said in terms of the economics of Hollywood is they're all going to fail. These movies are going to do really bad in multiple. It'll be sort of like the stock market crash, only it will be for these massive studios. Now, after that, I see a real renaissance in movies, and going back to almost like that early '90s feel in movies where it was like anything kind of goes. But for now, that's not certainly not the case, and it's kind of really strange because with the advent of YouTube and everything else, you would think independent film would just be really exploding, and it is. I mean, you have things out there, South by Southwest, and you have Sundance and a million other festivals that are out there, but I'm talking about really capturing the imagination of the zeitgeist. There's no more big movements out there anymore. There used to be, like, the last big musical movements were really in the 90s, and the people that were there are still here with us. It's really funny if you watch an old movie from the 90s, and no matter what genre it is or what music it is, most of those people are still around. It's the same folks, and it's just it's really weird, and it's really odd that it's like we're free in terms of American culture, American pop culture specifically. It's really in a freeze frame from that time, and it's like new talent hasn't figured out the model yet to really break through in the internet age. And I'm not entirely sure that those kinds of forms of art may survive. I mean, people don't really go crazy over pulp novels anymore and don't really read anymore. And they don't really go crazy over sculptures or oil paintings, and things die off, and maybe popular music will die off, and films as we know them will die off. So I don't know, maybe.
I think that it kind of does make one question a little bit, like as if we're almost stuck in time in a way, even though things are moving forward. Like you said, when it comes to the entertainment business, and I'm thinking like movies and music specifically, it seems to be stuck, even though the people are aging, a little bit, whatever, but they're the exact same people. And the movies they're making is the exact same movies. They've made so many Spider-Man movies. They've made so many Joker movies. They made, you know what I mean? They just keep
Hmm.
making the same film over and over and over and over. And it makes you wonder, like, did everything just freeze? Did the story just end? So, but it didn't end, so it just keeps repeating itself and repeating itself and repeating itself. I think it puts people in a very strange state of mind when things don't move forward for, like, you know, well over, I mean, how much time has it been now? I was going to say a decade or two.
I'd say
Things,
20 years. I'd say now. I mean, if you think about, well, maybe not 20. You're right. Maybe 15 or so. I'd say the early 2000s was the beginning of the end of it.
yes, because I've heard a lot of people say that they think that, that it wasn't so much 2012, but they feel like the game or the simulation or the idea kind of hit its peak point in the 2001 kind of era. And that since then, things have been repeating themselves. It's almost like the story got stuck and couldn't really go any further. And it's just kind of, unwinding into chaos. And in some ways, I would say, like, yeah, I feel like there was a lot of really cool original stuff coming forward in the 90s. And even like some of the movies, like some of the visual effects and everything was so bad, but the stories were so good and so imaginative and so crazy. And now it's the opposite. Like you have the best visual effects in the world with the most boring stories that
Hmm.
no one, or either boring because they've been told 100,000 times, or because they just want to write something very, very safe and get the return on their investment for the movies.
Oh, totally, totally, absolutely, and it happened to music, and it's happening to movies, and as far as I mean, reading is dead. I mean, no one reads really anymore, which is truly sad, and certainly no one reads for pleasure in terms of like fiction. And to think, 20, 25 years ago, people still read books, and they still, very much cared about that. And it's still, but still, see how someone brought up Netflix. Now that's what I'm talking about, right? You have to take a whole bunch of movies and 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 shows and documentaries to create a zeitgeist moment. So Netflix and chill, right? And
Yes.
that you've got, it's not one movie like a Pulp Fiction or a one album, you know, it's not like that. You have to take a collection of things to get that kind of zeitgeisty thing going on where everyone knows, okay, Netflix is like a thing. Like someone was mentioning Fleabag. Yeah, there's different kinds of movies and shows that I love to watch, like Veep. I love to watch Veep. Fleabag is cool. There's different kinds of shows. I was waiting for the Billy Bob Thornton thing just came out again on Amazon. Goliath. I did all kinds of different Man in the High Castle, and there, but it still doesn't rise to that level. You have to take entire like Netflix or Amazon or HBO. There isn't, I don't know, it's very strange. It's very, and in music, you better hang it up. There's nothing out there unless it's 20 plus years old, or at least 15, early 2000s. You better hang it up. And I don't care what genre it is in terms of popular music, it froze right around 2004ish. And
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, there's great bands out there, and I don't care what kind of music you listen to in terms of pop bands. Personally, I like rock, but and there's great bands, but it's like nope, not a ripple, not in the least. And then what's out there? Oh my god, it's awful, but ugh.
They're not signing the bands. They're super talented bands, like young, fresh, like great sound going on, but no one is interested in signing them. People just want to be like, oh, whatever band it is that's already huge, let's put
Hmm.
our money into them. Let's put our money into Metallica or something that's like massively established and has been there for decades, but nobody wants to back, especially financially, a new band in case it doesn't work out. And it's like that's okay for the moment, but eventually the bands that have been rocking and rolling, like the Rolling Stones, forever and ever and ever,
Hmm.
eventually they're going to die of old age, presumably, unless Schrodinger's effect, they don't, and they just keep rocking forever. But
Right.
that's going to be really depressing. I'm sorry, Rolling Stones, but I'm not sure I want to look at you for the next 100 years.
And I think that the new art form that's out there is what we're doing. It's talk. It's this form of podcasting and doing your kind of own thing and following down interesting storylines of reality like we do with the Mandela effect or whatever it is. But the problem is this is that it's beforehand for so it was like the music thing with Napster and Metallica. It was such an affront to power, such an affront to control. Because you look back to the 90s and you're like, wow, that was really a controlled period of time in terms of what people could hear, what they could see, what was socially acceptable. And the problem is this new form keeps getting banned because what people are doing is they're taking the power into their own hands and they're letting their opinions become known. And it's no longer just tightly knit coastal communities that have 80% of the wealth, and that's what America was used to. And if you came from the Midwest or you came from a coastal city and you went to a bigger coastal city, you would have to blend into that culture or you were pushed out of that culture. Just like Hollywood, it's a closed culture. Washington D.C. is a closed culture. There are different subcultures inside of New York City. They are closed cultures, and you have to align with them politically. You have to align with them socially, and you have to meet all of the check boxes, or it is just completely and utterly unacceptable for you to be around. And the problem is the new art form that's forming is this sort of spun narrative of how individuals see reality, and they can attract people to them, and whether they like it or not, they're creating their own control systems and their own narratives. The problem is they don't own the platforms. These platforms are becoming publishing platforms, whether they like to admit it or not, and these individual quote-unquote artists, they are far, far, far from the establishment control systems, whether it's Los Angeles or San Francisco, Chicago, New York City, all of those places that have all of the major hubs of culture and art and power and money and the stock market and all of those things. So this new form is being stifled by ironically the fruits of those power systems, which happen to be, like for instance right now Silicon Valley, which is putting out these kinds of systems. So I don't know, it's very strange. We're way over. We went into really strange territory this evening. Been a very strange week. So I don't know. You have anything else?
Yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying. Like in some very, very strange way, the spoken word free expression is turning into an art form in itself. And I've been playing music for a long, long time. And, anyone that's like been on my channel, like I even post some music there, I post my SoundCloud on Twitter and everything like that. But in some really strange way, I almost feel like this show is the band I was supposed to end up in. This is the thing that I was supposed to use my voice for. I've been singing and singing and singing for decades. And actually, it's like, no, you're supposed to talk. You were supposed to say your part, like with you and Buster and everyone else that's like integral to this channel. Everyone like Dark Slayer, everyone in the comments that's part of the show too. And we all have our discourse. In some strange way, these are the bands that we were supposed to end up in here in the Mandela Effect community. And we're actually putting out this vibration, putting out this... what we were supposed to say in life, and it came in a very unexpected way. But I honestly feel like that's what happened to me, and I was never expecting it, but I think that it's a very awesome thing. And I think that it is edgy and dangerous in some strange way because they keep trying to get rid of shows like this. They got rid of Hangouts. They make it really difficult to try and handle this very complicated software that you and Buster have been trying to tackle to get the show online. They've been doing everything to silence this art form after they've already silenced movies and they've silenced the music industry. But I feel like it's going to be very hard to kill the podcast, internet radio industry. And maybe this is the way that the spirit of this thing can continue for a while yet.
Yeah, and I totally think this is the new art form, and yeah, it's very, very dangerous. I mean, I'm talking about rock and roll in the late 1950s dangerous. It's just absolutely has not been co-opted yet, and it's very much out of the control system, and they just don't know what to do. And you can throw up as much makeup tutorials as you want. You can throw up, and you can almost see it whenever it's corporate produced or when it's produced by one of the power systems through Los Angeles, through San Francisco, through New York City, through DC. DC. Well, not really DC. They don't really put out very much. They put out politics and garbage. But you know, it's you can see it whenever it's not real or authentic. You just can see it. You just know it, and you know it's been co-opted. And it's a very interesting art form that we're in here, and it's totally dangerous because it is very much I think it's like the first time someone took a guitar and they had distortion on it, and they did, you know, they put their fingers on the fret and they went brang, and that was it, and it was over with. And I think we're like in that kind of period of time, and I think the artists that were in that time period, they were able to shape people's opinions, and they were able to do it independent of any kind of control structure. And by the time we got to it, it was already played out. By the time, probably by the 70s, it was already under a total and absolute control, and it was masquerading as a revolution, and it wasn't. Versus now, you know, it's still very much anyone's game right now. And no matter what, even a Joker movie and things like that, they, in a way, maybe they drummed up this kind of fear because it's not out there for movies anymore, because it's like, you know, the veil's lifted of, you know, I know, you know, I appreciate them, but I'm old, and I appreciate them for you know what you have to go through to create a movie, and that it is a true art form. But then again, I like rock, and I'm an old person, so it's like, you know, the creative factor to it that I can understand. A lot of people, they don't want that. They don't care. They just want to be entertained, and they want to see a new version of reality. And that's essentially the core kind of ethos of art, is to rearrange what you thought was possible and then to actually actualize it in reality itself. So, I don't know. We're way over. We will talk to you folks later. I got to get going myself. So, that's about it.
Thank you, everybody. We'll talk to you guys soon.
Bye.